All right. So welcome back from lunch. I hope you could enjoy your lunch. You had something healthy, hopefully. We had a nice salad bowl here in our IDSA studio. And now we are all back from lunch. And I do see that already a lot of people joined the session, so I do not want to waste too much time. I do see that the moderator for this session has also arrived, Alberto Berreteaga. I will improve my pronunciation from time to time. And yeah, so, well, for moderation's sake, we have two sessions. This here, where you are in, is the session Next Generation Usage Control as Key Enabler for the Data Economy. And the parallel stream is Accelerating the Data Spaces Adoption Curve. So this is a presentation of our adoption team and the use case radar. This is in the other breakout room. So if you want to move there, you are free to do so. So here we will focus on usage control. This is the key of the value proposition of IDSA. We want to provide a trust anchor for data sharing ecosystems with IDS, with the reference architecture and the components like the IDS connector and all the concepts which are built around it. Well, usage control. And this is not only a technical challenge, it's also a legal challenge. And we will reflect this from really different sides and perspective. So I will hand over to the moderator, Alberto Berreteaga from Tecnalia. He was on stage in the morning as Tecnalia is now fresh competence center for IDSA in Spain, and so a strong driver for IDSA in European projects, in industry, different domains, manufacturing, but energy and more in Spain, and also on whole European scale. So I'm really happy, Alberto, that you moderate the session, and therefore I will hand over to you. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Lars. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to share just one slide. I hope you are seeing it now. Yes, you can see again today's presenters about usage control. We will review not only technical topics, but legal and ethical topics too. I think that will be really interesting to mix everything. We have little time, so I will try to rush. We will have Andrea, Philip, Tilman, Martin, and Maximilian today. Here, Tilman will start usage control and GDPR. Again, technical and legal GDPR perspective. After him, Philip, protecting non-personal data. It's common and under usage control, but we need to take care of this. Then Andrea, digital ethics. Again, we are not only talking about legal aspects, but ethics too. Then Martin, about contractual process. And last but not least, Maximilian, about how to share data. As you can see, we have 9-10 minutes for the first four presentations and only 4 or 5 minutes to the last one. We don't even have a question and answer slot here, but let's see if we have enough time. And if we don't have it, we will go to the break room Jupiter. We will have further instructions about that after the presentations. So sorry in advance for my poor lighting. I don't know why I have this presentation. Tilman, if you want to start, please. The floor is yours.
Perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you so much.
Very good. Okay, I have the pleasure to kick off this panel on usage control, and I'm very happy to do that. I will show you today that how and that usage control technologies can facilitate lawful data transfers under the GDPR. Okay. So I'm a data governance and compliance and privacy specialist at IONOS, Europe's biggest cloud and hosting provider. IONOS is IDSA member, and we are also part of Gaia X as a day one member. And yeah, please also feel free to contact me after the presentation at tilman.dralle@ionos.com if you have any questions. So as announced, I will take the data protection perspective in my presentation. And what that means is really nicely described already in the position paper of the IDSA on usage control in the international data spaces. So the position paper states that companies have, in general, an intrinsic and an extrinsic motivation to apply usage control, and that the extrinsic motivation is the EU GDPR. And it is also stated that usage control technologies can facilitate the enforcement of legal requirements such as data privacy regulations, and that is particularly what we will focus on in this presentation. So if we talk about usage control, we talk about these 21 different usage control policy classes that are laid out and described in the position paper. And if you look at these usage control policy classes, you will already see that usage control is much more than simply denying access or blocking access. It is really about very granularly restricting the usage of data by a data consumer, right? So this is what we talk about when we say usage control. And what we will focus on is today how these 21 usage control policies can help in the implementation of the GDPR. And under the GDPR, we have different roles, right? We always talk about data sharing. That's what the IDS is all about, data sharing. But the GDPR brings certain roles into play. Yeah? You can be a controller under the GDPR. You can be a processor or a joint controller, and you can have data transfers within a third country context or not. And I will show you today that the usage control technologies and policy classes really help in all of these data sharing situations. The first one is controller to processor. A processor is a company which processes personal data on behalf of a controller, so on the instructions of another company. And if we look into the GDPR, we find very clearly set out in Article 28 different requirements which relate to these processors and to these controller to processor data sharing situations. And they have also been detailed, these legal requirements, by the European Data Protection Board. And here I have a list for you of 5 GDPR requirements for controller to processor data transfers. And as you can see, for all of these requirements, we have corresponding usage control policies that help in the implementation of the GDPR. And specifically, let's take just one example. We have a GDPR requirement to delete personal data at the processor after the project has been finished. And we have a very nicely fitting usage control policy that also says, please use the data and then delete it afterwards. And we will technically enforce this. For joint controllers, the situation is very similar. So again, we have situations in the IDS universe where data is shared between 2 joint controllers. And with that, I mean a situation where 2 or more companies jointly determine the purposes and means of the processing. So both companies have a decisive influence on the processing operations. And again, under the GDPR, we have a couple of legal requirements that relate specifically to this situation. This is Article 26. We have, again, a guideline from the EDPB. And if you take a look at the requirements, which I, again, laid out for you on this slide, you will see that the usage control policies, which are defined in the position paper, again, really help, and that we have for each GDPR requirement at least one usage control policy that really helps in the implementation of the GDPR. And again, even for an important subject like finding and determining a legal basis for the processing, usage control helps, because if you have a requirement to modify the data, for example, to aggregate it or to anonymize it before using it, this really helps in complying with the GDPR, because obviously if you anonymize the data, the GDPR does not apply, or and thus the transfer would be lawful under much easier conditions. Very important aspect is also a third country transfer. Obviously, a third country transfer occurs if data is transferred from the EU to a non-EU or non-EEA based company. And also for these types of transfers, irrespective of the role, so irrespective of whether you have a controller or a processor, the usage control concept helps. We have legal requirements, again, set out in Article 44 of the GDPR. And you probably remember that these third country transfer requirements have recently been also elaborated upon, interpreted by the European Court of Justice in its Schrems II judgment. And there has also been a recommendation by the European Data Protection Board. You have the image on the right-hand side. And basically, what the Schrems II judgment and also the EDPB says, contractual and organizational measures alone will generally not help in making a third country transfer legal if public authorities have access to the personal data in the third country. And the EDPB states, as you can see here, that there will be situations where only technical measures might impede or render ineffective access by public authorities in third countries. So very clear, only technical measures can make a given third country transfer lawful, because these technical measures impede access by public authorities. And this statement, this requirement arising out of the GDPR, really corresponds very nicely, in my view, to the overall approach taken by the IDS, namely to have a transition from enforcing usage restrictions via organizational and contractual measures to a complete technical enforcement. So that is exactly what the GDPR, what the Schrems II judgment, and what the EDPB guidelines imply and require. So I have my key takeaways for you for usage control and its relationship with GDPR requirements. In my view, IDS usage control concept and technologies really significantly facilitate data transfers under the GDPR, under the General Data Protection Regulation. And this really covers all types of transfers, whether you transfer data from a controller to a processor or between joint controllers, and this also applies for third country transfers. And this is a very important point. With its focus on technical enforcement, the IDS usage control approach really corresponds with the developments in the regulatory space, meaning that the courts and the data protection authorities require usage control restrictions to be implemented by technical means and not merely by organizational or contractual means. So with that, I'm very well in time, and I would like to thank everyone for listening and hand over to Alberto again. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tilman. We have Philip ready. If you want to start sharing your screen now, when you are ready, you can start. Thank you so much.
Very sorry about the background noise, especially on
back noises, but lightning, we have everything today here. So
yeah, sorry, I just moved and there's still some work going on. This is worst possible timing. Okay. I hope it's over now. So thank you, Alberto, and thank you, Tilman, for a very instructive presentation and the help of usage control that can provide to use and sharing of personal data. I have the pleasure of talking about the other type of data that we might have in sharing situations, so the non-personal data. Non-personal data is any data that's not linked to human beings, not making human beings identifiable. So it's classic machine data that you might get out of your production lines, that you might get out of wind generators, cars, as long as the car is not linked to a human being. And other than in the personal data space, we don't have an elaborate regulation telling us how and when and where and how to protect data and how to use it. But we need to look at different means when we share those data. In particular, do we share it only with the people that we want to share it with? And if the data comes into the hands of other people, can we restrict them from using it? I will not speak about access to data. That's more a competition law topic, and yes, that can be addressed with usage control as well. But more about the who has a right to the data. Is there something like the right to non-personal data, or is it by non-legal people typically said, is there an ownership to data? So you're probably aware that for things like the chair you're sitting on, someone owns that chair, someone has property of it, and that someone can allow someone else to use it or not use it, or can transfer it to someone else, the ownership, the property. And for IP things in the non-material world, and non-physical world, we also have things like that. It's the IP rights, trademark rights, patent rights, design rights, or copyright, where also there's some kind of ownership, and the one who owns that right can direct and manage how that right is used. Do we have something similar for data? That is what I'm going to talk about today. And that will also address about who would own such data if we have something like ownership. Like the chair, once it's produced, it's still owned by the producer, then the producer sells it to a distributor, and then it's owned by the distributor, and then at some point it's owned by the end consumer. Who would own the data from, say, a wind generator? Would it be the people that create that wind generation turbine and maybe have some backend running? Would it be the owner, or would it be the user in terms of the chair? The owner might be the company you're working for, but you're the user, you have possession of the chair. If we relate that to data, who would own the data that you would have? So maybe we need to address this, maybe we do not, because actually there is right now no ownership to data, to take that right away in the beginning. There are possible solutions and possible thought strategies there, what we could do, but in the end they are all challenged somewhere, and usage control, but usage control can help us to manage data anyways. So first of all, we can think about data. Data has a relationship with databases. There is something like a right to a database. It's similar to copyright. We would call it the ancillary rights to copyright. It's a database right. It protects the database and allows the owner of a database to keep others from using it. It allows the owner of the database to license it out, to generate money from it, and to tell, in terms of licensing, manage how other people use the database. But that requires that there's a systematic sorting of the data within the database, and not just the data lake. So it's not just single data points that are protected by the database rights, but the total systematic sorting of the data. And also the owner must have invested some time and effort and money into the creation of the database and the collection of the data within. And if that's not the case, then there's no right to that database. And most importantly, the database right does not protect the single raw data within the database. So unfortunately, we cannot use that to control the usage of data by a legal way. So another idea about controlling the usage of data legally, on the legal side and organizational side, less the technical side, could be that we think about data as trade secrets. There's protection by trade secrets law, and that can also keep third parties from using data. if such raw data could be considered trade secrets. That can be the case if the data is related to the company that generates the data, that's fine, or that owns or has control over the data. If the company has a legitimate interest for keeping it secret, that's also quite easy. You don't want to have your production data non-secret, probably. It's intended to be kept secret, yes. But then there's another very important issue about this when you think about sharing data. To be a trade secret, that data must not be public knowledge. And if you keep on sharing data in a certain business model, in a certain operations model, at some point, I mean, if you share with 1 or 2 or 3 companies, it could still probably be considered secret if you have NDAs on that. But if you share it with a multitude of companies and recipients, at some point, the data is not considered secret anymore, and then it loses its quality as a trade secret. So that means if you really want to have protection for your raw data that you use in cooperation with other companies, you should not rely on the trade secrets law only. Because at some point it will not be a trade secret anymore, if at all, if there's no investment relevance to generating and keeping that data, it's not a trade secret. So another solution that we look at controlling data and the use of non-personal data could be contractual protections between companies. So you can enter into a contract with another company and licensing out the data. That's what we talked about in the task force, in the legal task force, in the IDSA, and we talked about license renting, data renting agreements and data purchase agreements. So you can do that. You can license out the data just as you would license out a trademark or patent. And that allows you to also contractually control the use and quality and quantity of that data. What can you do with the data? How often can you use it? Can you transfer it to a third party? You can put all that into the contract, and you can even put into the contract that if the other party is not adhering to the contract, that you get damages or indemnifications or penalties. The other party needs to pay you penalties. So legally, we're in a great world, right? We have control over the data, at least for us lawyers. I mean, we all know that legal control is not actual control, but we're in a great world. The only backside to that is, or the only caveat is, this only works between the parties of the contract. So if the data is leaked at some point, willingly or unwillingly, as a misuse or maybe as just as a data breach, and a third party gets hold of the data that was subject to the license in the contract, you cannot prosecute that third party based on the contract. So it gives you certain legal controls, but not complete legal controls. And that means there's no ownership to data. There's no absolute right to data that allows you to control the use on the legal side, or only in a very limited way. And that means we need to look at different means of protecting and our data when sharing it with third parties. And that is exactly where usage control comes into play and comes into use for the companies. Tilman already showed it for the GDPR side, that you have elaborate measures of how you can control the usage of data with the usage controls. And that applies exactly the same for the non-personal data, because the tools allow you to regulate the conditions for access to and use of data, limiting the quantity of data usage and also the quality of data usage. And that supports the contract you have with the other companies that you're cooperating with. And that also provides you technical protection against unauthorized use and access, unauthorized access of the data and misuse of the data, and therefore assists you in limiting the risks of loss of control over your data, even though you don't have the legal protections that you might have in IP rights elsewhere, or that you have for physical products. So usage control enables you to be in a similar position like an owner, even though you're not an owner on a legal side. So also for non-personal data, we have huge benefits of using usage controls when sharing your personal data. And that's it from my side. Thank you very much. And looking forward to Andrea's presentation.
Thank you so much, Philip. Just right in time. GDPR, non-personal secrets protection, and now ethics Andrea, please.
Yes, I'm just trying to
so
share my screen. So I hope that it works.
Yeah, it's here.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, thank you very much. My name is Andrea Panzer-Heemeier. I'm a lawyer as Philip and Tilman. I'm specialized in labor and employment and also in data protection, data law, but more incidentally at the beginning. I wrote my doctoral thesis about monitoring of employees, and when I realized that it is not an employment or employee or employment law topic, it was already too late, and I incidentally expert in data law and data protection. And in these early days, there was no possibility for a lawyer to earn money with it because data protection was nothing anyone was interested in. And it was just during the last years, as you all know, and realized that it became a real big topic, which I could never imagine during the time when I wrote the doctoral thesis. So having said this, the question is, why am I talking about digital ethics and not about data protection or law issues and legal questions? The reason is that I strongly believe that especially we as lawyers should not only think in legal perspectives, should not only check whether something is legally allowed or whether something is legally permitted, but we should also take into account the ethic aspects of, especially now in our context, the use of data, the digitization of business models, to avoid that in a later point of time, we figured out that our business model was legally allowed during the time we developed it, but that there were some ethical aspects we just didn't realize. So I think we should take a holistic approach, and we should combine the legal perspective together with and this is the reason why we established Beyond, which is a joint venture between the Institute for Digital Transformation and Healthcare, the founder Sarah Becker and Andre Niemat, who also gave a speech today and yesterday, and the law firm Arcis, where I'm a partner in. So we founded Beyond because we think we should, as I said, take a holistic approach to the digital ethics aspect in the digitization of the industries. From my perspective as a lawyer, my belief is that the law is the codification of ethical issues. So the law should and is always aiming to codify ethical aspects, but the law is not able to regulate all kinds of ethical aspects, and especially in our area where the progress is very fast, where the technical developments are very fast, we cannot only rely on the law, but we have to, as I said, check the ethical aspects. So to show you a little bit more in detail what we think is that we have the law on the one side. So the law is saying us what is allowed to do. Then we have the technical aspect, what can be done, which is usually much more than what is allowed to and what should be done. And then we have the ethical approach, checking what should be done. And we see that during, or especially currently, the companies see more and more the necessity to also take care of the ethical aspects and not only the legal aspects. As I said, especially as the legislation is not, as I would say, on top of time. We are trying to find legislation regarding artificial intelligence on the European level. This might take some years. As we know, regarding the GDPR, it can take a lifetime to come to a solution within the European Union. And in the meantime, the technical development will arise. So what we do, one more aspect, what we see during the last months and years is that companies are focusing more and more on digital ethics aspects, but very focused in the area of artificial intelligence. So we see ethical guidelines for artificial intelligence. We see ethical advisory panels for artificial intelligence. And we see at Merck, for example, according to my knowledge, the first DAX company establishing a digital ethics advisory panel more brighter than only focused on artificial intelligence. So what we do is that for our clients, we elaborate and establish digital ethics principles. We implement them in the company. We help establishing digital ethics boards, and we are including the digital ethics principles to the operationalization of products, of new business models, so that at the very first beginning, the idea of digital ethics principles will be integrated in the development. So the situation that something is developed, something is a new business model, and then we see at the end of the process that there are digital ethics risks which can do harm to the business model of the company. So we are performing digital ethical risk assessments, we are performing digital ethical due diligences, helping the client, as I said, to establish a respective system so that they can integrate these aspects in their development. There's just a little example on how we implement the ideas of digital ethics into use cases. And my resume of my short presentation is that do not forget digital ethics, do not stop at the borders of the law, do not stop or don't go beneath the borders of the law and the ethical borders with your technical possibilities. Always take into account as a company the digital ethics aspects, and not only for a very selfless, high moral issue, but for very hard facts. It will drive your business. It will make, in our view, the differentiation between successful companies in the future and companies who might have issues because of losing trust of their customers. So thank you very much. I think I kept my time limit, and I will then hand over to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Really, really fast. And if this is the first time you heard about ethical topics, digital ethics, you need to read more about this. It's really important. We have in mind these legal issues, these legal regulations, but more and more every day we have more ethic and ethical issues there, and we need to tackle them. And well, perhaps you are lucky and the legal people have them in mind, but usually we usually need to do this at the European project.
It's quite interesting because my experience is that the legal people do not have the ethic issues in mind. They have the legal issues in mind, and the ethical issues are discussed by philosophers, by medicicians, and so on, but not from the lawyer perspective. And I think this is very important because the law, as I said, cannot regulate 100% of everything which is possible, and we have to interpret the law by taking into account the underlying ethical principles.
Yes, it is. Lately, in European projects, at least, we usually have even a ethical work package just dedicated to that. And it's really important. Thank you so much. And now we are waiting for Martin Böhmer. That is not connected, I think. Yes. Hi, Martin. Welcome.
Hello, everybody.
We have GDPR, non-personal data secrets ethics, and now contractual process. The floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alberto. My name is Martin. I'm working for Fraunhofer IML in Dortmund, and I'm going to introduce the research project Legal Testbed Industry 4.0 to you. And I'm going to quickly tell you what this project is about and how it connects to data spaces and usage control. So to show you what the Legal Testbed project is about, I brought a quick video that we're now going to watch to start. All right. So what we have seen is that the objectives of the legal testbed project are mainly twofold. So on the one hand, a digital experimentation ground is created that can be considered as a tool that takes automated business process from the development state to the production state, as depicted below. So it's just a tool. It's not a business transaction platform or a marketplace or a broker. It's a tool to get business processes from development to production use. And the second objective is to provide recommendations on actions for politics and companies, particularly from a legal perspective, to make automatic contractual processes happen. So what we consider are these contractual processes, and it starts with the very process of contract closing, and also includes the negotiation. Sorry. So all these processes are done by machines only, with no human interaction. So the machines will negotiate the contracts, they close it, they will provide the service, and they will also provide the consideration, which in most cases is payment. So the entire negotiation, conclusion, and fulfillment of the contract is just done by machines. So we use blockchain and smart contract technology to do that and to do the actual documentation. We work on two particular use cases that are transport use case and a production use case, and enable multilateral contractual relations. Now the question is, what has all that to do with data spaces and usage control? So also usage control is some sort of negotiation and contracts that you conclude on using the data. So the idea is we can use what we do in the legal testbed project to negotiate and conclude contracts on how to use data. So imagine that the data provider and the data consumer want to exchange data via the connector. I mean, you all know that. And in the connector, there could be an app that does exactly the contractual processes. So a contract in the IDS context could consist of the negotiated policy clauses and some general information when the contract starts and some other stuff, and maybe the price. So then the connectors take care of the fulfillment of the contract, and there may be the clearinghouse involved for the consideration or the payment, if there's any payment involved. So the idea is to apply the negotiation and conclusion and technological findings from the legal testbed project to use it for concluding IDS contracts, so to say, that mainly consist of policies. And this is, as you have seen, the use cases we do in the legal testbed project do not cover data spaces, but we have set up another project that does exactly that type of transfer. It's called automatic IDS contract negotiation, in the abbreviation of T42, that's the internal name. And it does exactly the transfer from the findings of legal testbed to the IDS. And I mean, there's a contact here. So Norbert, my colleague, is the project lead of that automatic IDS negotiation project, and you're welcome to contact him. And he also works on the legal testbed project, so it's joint forces. So as you can see here, that project proposes some technical recommendations on how an IDS contract could be realized, and how that negotiation and the conclusion of the contract could actually be done. What has not been covered so far is the actual fulfillment of the contract. So if you're interested in that, there's a screenshot that shows how that negotiation actually went. So it's a simulation of negotiation of policy rules just by computers. Yeah. So you'll find the necessary details here on that slide. So another aspect that the legal testbed covers that is important for data spaces and for usage control is the topic of trust. So before you negotiate with other potential business partners or data providers, you may want to evaluate the trustworthiness they have. And in the legal testbed project, we're taking on this step as well, and we're trying to automate it as well. And here we're working closely together with the platform Industrie 4.0, and working on a so-called trustworthiness profile. That is a predefined set of information that is provided by self-disclosure, and can be the foundation to evaluate the trustworthiness by some trust agent, which would also be automated and is some piece of software. So
that was a 1 minute warning, I think.
Yeah. So last slide is now we have here the that's some brief overview about the main facts of the consortium, and I'm practically done. So thank you, Alberto. I cannot hear you, Alberto.
Sorry.
That's fine. So that was a hard end. Sorry.
Yeah. I was saying, next one is Maximilian, please. Max, if you are ready, you can connect and start sharing your slides. Okay, we are waiting for Max about a use case. While we wait, yeah, I think this, when we chat about IDS and contractual negotiation, we need to explain this really carefully. You know, people panic when you say, well, two machines are negotiating, they are reaching agreements between them. So we need to take care about this and explain this really, really well. Hello, Max, the floor is yours.
Okay, can you hear me?
Could you repeat, please? The sound is not very good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but the sound is a bit noisy. Right now, can you test again as soon as you can? Yeah, I think that the microphone is not working properly. Perhaps you can try again the headphones or...
That's very unfortunate. I'm really sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, the sound reaches us.
Max, yeah, I try to help you. Maybe you can try to change the audio setting next to the slide your share your slides option. It's yeah, the settings button down there. A little bit, yeah, next to your microphone on and off button, there is a audio setting. Maybe you can track it to change it. Yeah, no, more to the right side. Yeah, to more to the right side there, there is a audio setting, and then we can, if you, no, not this one. Yeah, this one, yeah, the settings button. And if you change the mic, or is there only one to check? No. Okay, let's try. Yeah, okay, yeah. Try it again and refresh the browser, dial in again, and I think then it should work. Refresh the browser and then it should work. Next. We wait for you, all good.
Okay. So, sorry for
okay. Yeah, you can refresh the browser then. I think then it should work. Refresh the browser and ask for enter. Yeah, okay. I think we should wait for him for
okay.
Yeah, for a moment, and we're still good in time.
We are 1 minute late, but
yeah,
we have 4 more minutes till the next session.
Okay.
Even in both tracks, so I think we can wait for Max. It will be a short presentation about the use case, but it is something it's really interesting to hear him. So let's see. A lot of topics around usage control, not only technical. If you're working around usage control, remember everything you are hearing here today. We have technical issues, but legal issues, ethical issues too. Hi, Max.
Hey.
Welcome again. Oh my God, much better now. Thank you so much.
You hear me now? Okay, great.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes it's a mess. I'm really sorry. Maybe I can just jump or do this now on my own. While I'm starting my presentation, in a very short, brief way, thank you very much for having me. I wanted to show you some key findings of our case study conducted for the German Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy about how to share data and data sharing platforms for organizations, economic and legal fundamentals, current practical projects, and first recommendations. I'm Maximilian Lindner, scientific consultant at the Institute of Innovation and Technology in Berlin. And in the name of my co-authors, Sebastian Straub, Dr. Bettina Kühne, and Peter Gabriel, I want to share some of our key findings with you. Just to keep the time waiting, I skipped the intro. So in brief, it was not. The study was not meant to share or to analyze the technical, but rather the organizational models of data sharing platforms in order to meet some of, or by conducting a use case study. And this use case study of at least 24 current existing and operating data sharing platforms in the sectors life sciences, industry, logistics, and trade showed us one thing. Users do see or start to see the benefits of data sharing with external partners, but of course there are obstacles which prevent a more precise engagement, so to speak, in data sharing platforms. This is a lack of technical know-how, a risk of unauthorized usage of data, and therefore the fear of being outsmarted by the competition, and the lack of awareness of the benefits of data sharing platforms. As we already heard, there is no data ownership law, and of course there are some legal constraints for sharing data, but in the end it comes down to legal control by concluding contracts, and an actual control, as already stated, in a technical but also organizational senses, which must be ensured by the operator of the data sharing platform. By conducting our study, we identified more or less some basic functions which have to be met or can be met by a data sharing platform, and can be divided into technical and non-technical functions, of course, with a lot of gray area in the middle. On the one hand, the data sharing platform needs to ensure a stable technical basis, such as a robust infrastructure for data storage, or even computing services, suitable security measures and also interfaces for a smooth data exchange. Furthermore, it needs to guarantee an effective and transparent usage control in a technical sense. That is maybe one of the key factors. But on the other hand, it also needs to ensure that there's effective and transparent measures for conflict management, so more socially based function of the platform. And of course, that this is true, especially when it comes to direct monetization of data on the platform, and mostly underrated, but in our opinion, highly important function is the ecosystem development. So in order to, including branding of the platform as a trustworthy and easy usable place for data sharing.
Okay.
I will skip a lot of the details here since I'm over the time already. So if you want to have a look, please check our study. This is available in German and in English language. The links you will find within our presentation. The last thing I wanted to show you is these are the 24 identified use cases. Here you can see two of these use cases which are closely related to IDSA, which are using the IDSA standard and certification as really a key element of their brand to ensure trustworthiness. And these are the lessons learned. You can see here, I will skip the first two.
You do not share the slides.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought, Alberto, I thought I shared the slides.
Yeah, and
I was
behind
kicked
you.
out again.
Anyway, the slides will be shared after the event, so you will be able to read them all. Have Maximilian contact, just in case you want to contact and get in further details about.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sorry, Lars, you have the floor now. Thank you.
Well, Alberto, you may have some conclusory words. So, as you've moderated, if you like to.
Yes, just to repeat what we have been showing during the session. Please remember that not only technical topics are important about usage control. You have seen a lot of examples. We have seen legal topics, ethical topics, one use case, and have in mind we are dealing with data here. So this is really important topics we have been chatting about today. Thank you so much.